Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to have you here today. I'm very pleased to welcome a gentleman called Brian Meader, who's going to talk about his business. So I'm going to introduce you. So Brian, hello, thanks for coming. And perhaps you'd be kind enough to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for suggesting for us to have this conversation here.
Pleasure.
My name is Brian Meader. I'm originally from Germany. I have been living in Ireland for the last 8 years. That's why I have a bit of a funny accent.
Oh,
And my background is actually in engineering. So something totally different to what I'm doing now. I quit that job 8 years ago because I wasn't happy where I was. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to have a bigger impact on people. And I developed a passion back then for nutrition, for alternative ways of helping people get better, improve their health, and just kind of empowering people on what they can do in order to get better themselves. Something that you wouldn't hear normally, I suppose, in the mainstream or from doctors. So I said, like, I have to fill this gap somehow and help people to find something out that they haven't heard before. And that's what kind of like brought me onto this journey of empowering people, of learning more about nutrition, how the foods that we eat affect our body positively, but also negatively, how a lot of illness, aging, symptoms that we experience can all be linked to certain lack of minerals, lack of vitamins, inflammation, the wrong foods, allergies. So it's quite interesting, like when you dig into this a bit deeper. And yeah, I'm just here to share more on that because it's a big field, and I'm only scratching the surface, I suppose, so far. But I just love empowering people and helping them with their health.
well, you've got an infinitely huge audience because everybody should be interested in health and diet. I know a lot of people aren't so interested; they just take the easy alternative. But I remember myself, I read somewhere, I think it was one of the Greek philosophers said, let food be your medicine and let medicine be your food. Or it might have been the other way around, but that's so important.
Absolutely. Hippocrates, a smart man from Greece, said that. Yes.
Was it Hippocrates?
Yes.
Ah. So, Brian, tell me, I'm very interested. What made you become a nutritional health therapist and coach?
Well, really, it goes back, I think, when I look back in who I am or who I was, even as a child, I was always very inquisitive. And I always wanted to know answers to things. And I was asking questions all day long until my dad said one day, "Will you stop asking questions?" But I was always the person, I just never took an answer just for granted. I wanted to know why. If you tell me I have to do something, tell me why. And that is something that has always been stuck with me. And I think through my own health journey in my early 20s, mid 20s, I played a lot of soccer, and I developed the different little issues, niggles, nothing major, but always had little muscle pains or muscle issues. And then I had a chronically inflamed Achilles tendon. And then at 29, I was diagnosed with arthritis in my shoulders. And it just didn't make sense to me to get a diagnosis like this at age 29. And that was when I started asking again, like, but why? Like, why is this happening? But I had no access back then really to researching or to knowing where to start. And I was lucky at the time. I was a lucky man because I met my now fiance back then, who was already in that kind of like area of alternative health, helping people with their health. And she said to me, why don't you look into nutrition and look into something called gluten back then, which I think now, 15 years, 14 years later, a lot of people are more aware of. And I had no concept of that. And I looked it up, and I just found, okay, there's a lot of connections between gluten and what it does to your body. It causes inflammation, can cause digestive issues, but many knock-on effects that we might not connect to it straight away. And so I changed my diet back then. That was like 13 years ago, roughly. I changed my own diet, and nothing major, but I just had a bit less bread because coming from Germany, we eat bread all day, basically. Bread for breakfast, bread for lunch, bread as a dinner with ham and cheese. Like, a lot of bread, a lot of hams, cured meats. and I suppose processed meats. And I changed that. I started looking more into vegetables, more fruits. I brought my own smoothies to work, which was very odd back then. I remember how people were looking at me. But funny enough, after about 6 weeks, my inflammation in my Achilles was gone and my shoulders were fine again.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, this is fascinating. Like no one told me about this. No doctor told me about this. For years they were giving me painkillers, and it just didn't tackle the underlying, the root cause. It was just masking the symptoms. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. No one has told me about this. I became very interested and very passionate about it. And I started researching more, went online, ordered books, started reading more books on the subject, and just started talking to other people about it, of what I've discovered, of what I thought everyone should know now. And a lot of people actually came back to me and said, hey, tell me more about this. Can I eat this? Is this pasta the right one, or would you rather eat this one? And that's where I realized a lot of people are actually like craving information, are interested in feeling better and improving their health. And I was very grateful, because if my fiance, my girlfriend back then, didn't kind of get the ball rolling for me and mention that to me, I wouldn't have researched, I wouldn't have looked at it. And so now I've realized, okay, maybe I'm the person now for other people to also start their ball rolling by introducing them to small little things, people to follow, doctors to listen to, podcasts to listen to, books to read. So just so they can get on their journey of finding out what they can do in order to improve their health and their symptoms. And so that's kind of like what got me onto that road. And it's been an exciting 8, 10, 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun seeing people get answers to the problems that no one had an answer for.
I think it's just so, I find it still quite incredulous in the modern world that schools teach all kinds of things. They don't teach much about food. They teach nothing. If we look back to our ancestors, before tinned food, processed food was a thing, everything was natural by default. So people just take it for granted they would grow up in having natural food, nothing out of a box, nothing out of a tin. I saw a video a while ago, and it was a guy interviewing a school child here in the UK, and he said, where does milk come from? And the boy, quite naturally, he just answered, oh, it comes from the supermarket. I go with my mum and we'd buy it. And he said, but where does it come from? And the little boy didn't know. And I was quite stunned, because I thought it's such a fundamental question. So you don't eat, but what it indicated to me is that there's so little education at an early age, because that's when all our good habits start. So if children aren't being taught the fundamentals, like, where milk comes from cows and vegetables come out of the ground, all these fundamental things, they suddenly turn into adults buying processed food, buying things in a tin, because it's just the natural way, the way they've been brought up with their family to do so. I was very fortunate that my mother was a very good cook, bought lots of natural ingredients. So I've always had a natural interest in food. And as I've got older, I've realized how important it is for our well-being. But isn't it shocking how many people, they just buy stuff without even looking at the label and knowing what's in it, and they just take it, they just assume it's okay and they eat it. It's just so shocking. And yet our ancestors were very conditioned into all the herbal remedies that have been around for thousands of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I find it remarkable that human beings seem to have so little interest, although I think it's improving. And thankfully for people like yourself, are kind of raising that awareness and educating people. It's brilliant. Really important.
I totally agree with you on this. And that's one of the reasons also why I do what I do. I don't want to just be a therapist or a coach who tells people what to do. I want them to understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Because when you know why, it gives you power. Otherwise, I'm just another person that tells you what to do because that's what I believe is the right thing. So I want people to understand why they're doing it. And you're totally right. It comes back to, children copying what their parents do or buy. And it comes down to, that's a bigger story in itself, like the way we live our life, the lifestyle, everything is quick and rushed, and it has to be convenient. And so children lose that connection with what real food is.
Yeah.
And that becomes then difficult, like when you grow up then, because you don't know any different. And so I see it in supermarkets. I always feel sorry a little bit for people who are behind me or in front of me at the till, because I always check what they're buying. Not like just to see, and it's amazes me because there's very little food what people buy in the supermarket.
Yeah.
It's all processed or mainly processed. It's cheap meats, but it's a lot. It's quantity, but not quality. And I think we have to like relearn that and understand really what's in it. And I found a funny post the other day of someone had different food label, different food kind of like advertisings up of like famous brands, and it said if the labels were really telling you what's in it. So it was like you saw like like let's say like a Coca-Cola can, but rather than selling like the way it's been sold, it tells you, oh, this is water and sugar and phosphoric acid, but made it like in an advertising way. It was just
Yeah.
very funny. And I sent one of them to my mother because my mother is from America, and she would have back when we grew up, we got a lot of like American kind of foods. She didn't know any different. She didn't know any better. Now she has come a long way. She's like now cooking like incredible, like healthy. Is like really got it now. But it's just interesting because there's this frosting for a cake, and we always got remember that. And basically it says now the frosting. It's just the label says instead of frosting it says 3 sugars and a bit of oil, and no strawberries added because it's strawberry flavor frosting. And I had to share with her. She's like, "Yeah, I know. Back then, I didn't know any different." And so I think there's no judgment. We are all where we are, but I think there's always ways to change and to prove. Because I didn't know either. I didn't know either at some stage, and I'm just here to show people, hey, maybe the issue you have some sort of connection with the things that you eat that you think are good for you, but might not be.
It's very interesting about what you're saying about the shopping trolley. I do the same thing. I kind of walk around, and it's a bit of a cliche or a stereotype, and I don't like to judge people at all, but I often see people with a big shopping trolley, and they've got the big multi-packs of crisps, maybe 28 big, almost like a sack of crisps, and then they've got the 6-pack 2 liters of Coca-Cola. And you look in the trolley and you think there's no apples, there's no vegetables in it. It's just literally everything in a polythene bag or in a box. And I'm sorry to say that the people pushing the trolley invariably are quite large people. It's a very obvious connection, isn't it? And it's quite sad, because why is it that people form these habits? They just don't look beyond, or they don't look in the mirror and make the association between the huge amounts of sugar and the crap that they're buying, to be quite frank, and their demeanor and their appearance. Not only their size, but you can just see in somebody's face, their skin, their hair. It's just remarkable. And these are people that kind of in their 30s, perhaps, who would you think would be at a stage in life where they would know enough about looking after themselves, but apparently not. It's quite remarkable.
It is remarkable, and it just shows that there's a need for people like
Yeah.
me and all sorts of other health coaches, because there's more to it than just not knowing what kind of foods are good for you and what are not. I think there's also a deeper level, and that goes a step further into an emotional side of what certain foods do to people.
Yes.
That opens a whole new box of things to look at. But that's why, and I think like we as humans, we have to like have compassion for people.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we have to catch ourselves of like, you're judging, take a step back. There's a reason why. And so yes, for some people it is just lack of information. And for others it's just the easier way to go through life, to numb themselves, because this is what it is.
Yeah.
I would say sugar and processed foods are no different to alcohol. It does
Yeah.
the same thing. It does the exact same thing. And so I really have to learn, that's me personally, you have to learn to have the compassion for people, to see why they're doing certain why they make certain choices,
Yes.
and can't get out of that cycle. Because that's a hard place to be in, a difficult place to be in. And that's where I think that's where the coaching comes in, where you're like, you can pick the person up, but look at it just beyond the, hey, understanding there's the nutrition side of things, but there's also an emotional contributor to making these food choices.
It's very powerful, isn't it? I know myself, in parts of my life, I know for a fact that I've had comfort food, not always eating the best thing. It's a very common thing. People don't always recognize what they're doing. In my own hindsight, I know that I've done it. We eat things that are satisfying in the moment because of the flavor or the texture, but actually are very bad for us. And same with alcohol. I still enjoy the occasional drink. I've cut back massively, but in the past, having too much alcohol, it's almost like an escape mechanism, and it can be the same with food. People indulge in delicious food in the moment, which gives them a quick fix, but just contributes to the long-term problem. It doesn't help at all. It's like a hangover, isn't it? You enjoy the moment, but you pay for it the next day with the hangover. And with food, you pay for it long term with your health and weight and all of those kinds of issues as well.
Absolutely.
So Brian, I'm really interested to learn, what do you help your clients achieve?
So really, like what I said earlier, it's for me, it is about empowering people, empowering my clients to understand why we're doing what we're doing, and to understand even their triggers, understanding when they make the wrong choices, when they kind of like fall off the wagon again. So it's all about really helping people with their health. So what health means to me might be different to what health means to you, might mean something different to what health means to someone else. So for someone who, for example, weighs 200 pounds, health for that person might just mean losing 20 pounds. Maybe. But for me, it might be like, no, to really get you somewhere, you have to lose 40 pounds. Right. And so it's always for the person, like what the person wants to achieve. For someone who might be pre-diabetic, and that's all they're looking at, their goal is to stabilize their blood sugar. So I'll work with them on that. But through working with them on that, I'll see there's other things also in the background that's showing, like, that are kind of like the knock-on effect from being pre-diabetic, from having a blood sugar disbalance. And so it always depends on what the person wants to achieve. If that's not of interest for them, but they have the motivation to get their blood sugar balanced, then I'll focus with them on that.
Yeah.
But through that process, I bring them along to understand also, like, hey, okay, this is connected to it, right? Or maybe something else actually led to it. So I have to bring those things together. That's why I always look at the body as a whole. When someone comes to me, I want to know their goal, their health goal, but I don't just address that one thing. If someone comes to me and says, I have psoriasis on my skin, and I just look at the skin without looking at the liver and the gut, that's not really helping that person. So it's about helping the person understand how these things are connected, and then addressing it in a holistic way. And that is like generally like through cutting out certain foods. I will never tell someone to do an extreme diet, because that just doesn't work. I think there's just through little changes, little adjustments, step by step, you can achieve a lot.
Yeah.
And not everyone has to go all the way. For someone, just leaving one food that might cause a lot of allergies, or it's rich in allergens. You might not be allergic to it, but it might cause the immune system to overreact. Even just one food cutting out, it might solve the problem.
Yeah.
Would cutting out 2 other foods also be of benefit? It probably would. But I don't have to push it for everyone to go all the way. I just wanted to get them to where they want to get. And then from there, there's always room to improve. But my focus really is to not put my idea of health onto them, but help them improve their symptoms or their issues that they have, and empower them to understand why it's important to leave a certain food out, and to have another one maybe a bit more, why it's important to supplement certain things, why it's important maybe in that case to support the gut, why it's important maybe here to focus more on the liver, why it's important to also look at lifestyle. So it's one thing is the food, but if you eat the healthiest food that's there, but you're eating that on your laptop between calls and you're stressed, not even thinking of the food, it doesn't get digested properly. Your body's not absorbing it. You're in a stress response. And so all of these things kind of like come into when I work with clients. And then of course, when clients struggle with maintaining a certain plan or maintaining a new routine or implementing a new routine, it's then looking at, okay, like, how can we address your habits? And even getting people to understand a little bit about habits, like how they formed and how we can, through little tweaks, help someone to make better choices. Because a lot of the things we do in life, I think 95% or something, we do on autopilot throughout the day. And so once you understand and once you like know, okay, where can I just like put my foot in somewhere and just do something different to what I normally do, has a knock-on effect on the whole day. But it's because most things are done like the same way. We get up in the morning, we do the same thing, we go to the toilet, we brush our teeth, we have a shower, we have the coffee, and we have the porridge. And you're already like you're in the same response like yesterday. So your brain is just like, oh, I've done that yesterday, we'll do the same again today. And so, but once you start that and change that like just a little bit, nothing major, it's amazing to see how it's easier for people then to make better choices and not having to fight their brain all the time, because the brain wants to go back to what we've done yesterday and last year and 10 years ago. So it's just helping people, empowering them to have the strength and to have the willpower to maintain the new version of themselves that they haven't even met yet.
That's really interesting, Brian, because I know myself. I mean, I remember I've read a book about I think it's called The Power of Habit. And I know how powerful habit is, because it's kind of, even from driving from A to B, the number of times where I've wanted to go somewhere different and I've taken my conventional route, because I'm kind of on autopilot. And as you say, we wake up in the morning, we're in that kind of half awake state where we go to the bathroom, we splash out, whatever we do. And that's a repeated ritual that we do thousands of times in our lives. And that's kind of ingrained with us. And we don't sort of wake up and think, oh, I think I'll go to the bathroom. Oh, I think I'll walk down the stairs. We don't have those thoughts. We just do them. And putting the kettle on, getting milk out of the fridge, they're really kind of subconscious. They're habits. And I know that forming good habits takes a while to do. So it's really interesting to see what you're saying about that, because forming a new habits needs some kind of external help to make it happen. It's quite hard, isn't it, to form a good new habit and to replace a bad old one, because they're so ingrained in us.
It is. It's not easy. And I fail. Look, it's not about getting perfect, but it's just I think understanding how it works, and then also being aware when it happens. I'm more aware now when they happen, and I'm aware, and then I make the conscious decision, no, I'm still having it. So I eat chocolate, not during the week in general, but on the weekend I want something. But every now and then, for example, I like to watch a bit of football, and more so on the weekends. So I like to watch the highlights of the German league, because that's where I'm from. And it's automatic when I sit down on the couch and I turn it on, it's automatic that my brain is like, let's get some crisps. It's automatic. It's there. Now I'm not getting them, but it's just amazing to watch that. So like in the past, I would have said yes to it much more often. Then the awareness came. Then I made a conscious decision. Yeah, okay, I'm still having them. But then you empower yourself like, okay, I made a conscious decision. Now I can also choose in the future not to have them. Now, if I want them again at some stage, I might have them. But I don't let that be controlled by the subconscious program that has been there for years, for decades, because that's what I did. That's what I used to do. And now I'm like, I can make the decision like, I know they're not good for me, I understand that. But the odd time, it's just that comfort in that moment where I'm like, I'm okay with that. It's not going to throw because I'm in a very good shape, and it's not going to throw me all the way back somewhere. But for someone who's only starting off, when you start off, I think it's important to resist that and to build around that, because you have to build that muscle first to be more able to make a conscious decision on saying no.
That's really interesting as well, because I meditate frequently.
13:30.
And part of meditation is kind of observing your own thoughts, almost from a bystander's perspective. So you have a thought about something, and then you become aware that you're thinking about the thing. And I think it's quite similar to what you were describing, because perhaps you're sitting on the sofa and you think, I really fancy a packet of cheese and onion crisps, and you kind of probably impulsively go and grab a packet. But being mindful about it, you kind of sit there with an awareness of, okay, I feel myself desiring some cheese and onion crisps. I feel that thought arising, and then you can kind of observe those feelings and try and control them, and just sit with it for a while and think, okay, I'm not going to, I'm going to choose to sit here and observe this feeling, and it will pass, or maybe get a glass of water or have an apple or something. But that's quite an interesting experience to do, because most of the time we don't do that. We just get caught up in the moment of the feeling and we'll react to it, rather than trying to observe ourselves and say, okay, Paul, you're feeling hungry, you fancy some crisps, let's just sit with that feeling for a while. It's very interesting what you were saying there.
Yeah, it really is. It just gives power, and it gives power, and again, it shows people how important it is to be aware that most things we don't decide to do consciously.
Yeah.
And that's when, I think, when you realize that, that's when you're really empowered, because then you realize, God, there's so many other things in life that I can actually do differently, that I actually have control over, that I can actually change, whether it's in your job, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your relationship, whether it's whatever it is, because even there, so many things become automatic.
Yeah.
The way we react, the way we talk to each other, the way one says something, the other one reacts to it. It's just an energy. It's just the same thing happens over and over. Then there's frustration. But when you realize, but hold on now, maybe this is all automatic. Doesn't matter what she says, I react. Doesn't matter what he says, I react. Maybe we can look at that aspect. So it's an underlying program to address. And so I think it's okay, yeah. So some people might start with changing nutrition and the habits there, but then the habits, they can come into all sorts of life.
Yeah. And you said something else earlier which really stuck with me, because you were talking about if a doctor was diagnosing psoriasis or eczema or something like that. And I know this from my own experience with my children many years ago. In my experience, a doctor's natural reaction would be, okay, let's try a steroid cream, let's try this cream, they never sort of think, okay, let's look at your liver, let's look at your gut, what are you eating? And I know from my, you're an expert, but even my reading and knowledge has told me that the food that we consume manifests in the skin, and creams and lotions just kind of papering over the cracks in the wall. They're not addressing the root cause. But we have a kind of medical profession that are highly trained, but they still think in those terms. It's just the more I learn, the more I'm not disillusioned, but disenchanted with the medical profession, because I respect their knowledge hugely. But they always treat, it's the symptoms they treat, not the root cause. It always seems to be the case.
The more you learn, the more you need to realize you have to unlearn.
Yes.
And that's a whole new subject in and of itself, because, and I listened to a podcast on that, funny enough, yesterday, and we could go down a lot of roads now, why that is and where that came from. But it really shows that medicine has its place.
Yeah.
Western medicine has its place. The things we can do these days with like imaging, with surgery, with certain like physiotherapy treatments and things like that, restructuring things, like amazing. But I think for chronic illness, we're going a very wrong way. Because there's that missing understanding, and I've seen it personally. I had my own experience, but I also hear from clients myself where, you know, someone has an issue with their hormones. Okay, you go to an endocrinologist. That gets kind of managed. Then an issue arises with the liver, so you go to a specialist there. Then you have a joint issue, you go to, well, I don't even know what they're like, a surgeon. I don't know, orthodontist, is it? Like, no, not orthodontist. I don't know the English word for that. But someone who deals with joints or, you know, bones. But none of them talk to each other.
No.
The information doesn't come together anywhere. And how we can actually, as specialists, think that none of these things are connected in some way or another, maybe not directly, but when you have a certain issue arising, you know, which leads to a lack of a mineral, and there's certain minerals that we're all lacking because of our diet and our soil and our foods, and they're needed for so many things, for so many processes in the body. Then how can we not see that this might be like connected to another area of the body? That to me, at this stage, it really baffles me.
Yes, I completely agree.
And there's one, I can give you like one last one quick story there. A friend of mine is also a nutritional therapist, and he has good friends who are actually like doctors, like GPs in Germany. They're in their late 50s, early 60s, so they're almost coming to the end of their doctor's career. And he would be good friends with both of them. The wife seems to be more open, but the husband is like, no, like total old school, traditional Western, like Western medicine, nutrition has nothing to do with it. And he's like, I had a conversation with them, and the husband basically said to my friend, whose name is Marcus, said, Marcus, I've been a doctor for 30 plus years. Every year, I'm invited to conferences to attend for a weekend where we hear like all the latest updates and news and studies and publishings. Not once in 30 years has anyone on stage spoken about nutrition. Don't you think if nutrition had anything to do with your health, they would tell us?
Not necessarily, no. They're selling drugs.
So that was the attitude of this one particular doctor.
Wow.
And it's just showed me like, wow, it's not just that, yes, on some level they're not being trained in it, but also they just don't, if it's not trained, it doesn't exist.
It's quite an
That's
arrogant
scientific,
viewpoint, isn't it?
it's that science you like, it's not on paper, it doesn't exist. Which I think is an interesting way of looking at things.
Very close-minded, very close-minded.
Yes.
Wow. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all, but hopefully things will improve. So Brian, tell me, why should somebody work with a nutritional therapist and health coach?
I always like to look at it from a bit of a bigger picture. There's so many things in our lives where we go and get expertise by someone else. And most of the times it's not to do with ourselves. So if I need my car serviced, I bring it to someone who knows how to fix a car. If I need plumbing to be done in the house and I'm not really like, I don't know how to do that, I get a plumber. If I need electricity to be stored in the house, I get an electrician, because they have studied that, they have worked in that field, they have seen all sorts of different scenarios in that field, so they're experts, and they know exactly where to go, where to look, and fix it within a few minutes. Whereas if I try to figure out all that by myself, it will take me a while. I might have to watch a YouTube video or two to figure that out. And so where I feel nutritional therapists, health coaches come into play and have their place, it's to help people just to break down that time, just to get it done quicker, know exactly where to start and how to bring that person along so that they don't get lost in all the information that's out there, but they have simple tools to work with in order to get to where they want to get. And it is, I think, about prioritizing health, prioritizing yourself, prioritizing us is very, very important, which I feel is happening more and more and more. More people like put themselves first. People go and do massages, go to spas, go to the sauna and things like that. So I think working with someone who knows exactly how the body works and how different foods, but lifestyle and habits, our environment affects our health, is just very helpful because they're the experts in that field and they can pin you directly into the direction where you have to go.
Sure, makes good sense. I suppose a thought that came to me somewhere in the conversation today, most people can relate to the fact that if you smoke, which is like putting bad air into your lungs, I think everyone acknowledges that smoking is really bad for you and that it causes cancer and lots of other diseases. And I know it's a very, very crude analogy, but I'm thinking that if you put bad food in you, in the same way that you put bad air in your lungs, if you put bad food in your stomach, problems are going to happen. It's kind of like pollution going in your stomach instead of pollution going in your lungs. It's putting rubbish in your body is going to manifest in some way, isn't it? So I just had that realization earlier on. Interesting.
Yeah.
So Brian, if people want to get in touch with you and to contact you to find out more, how should they go about doing that?
So at this moment, the best way to get in touch with me is just through email.
Okay.
Which is brian.meter, Brian, BRIAN.meter, MEDER, at live.de, LIVE.de, or find me on Facebook. I'll be the first one coming up when you search for my name. And there's going to be more coming in the near future in regards to websites and different tools to find me.
Super. Anyway, Brian, that was hugely interesting. I could talk and listen to you all day because I'm really fascinated by what you have to talk about. And I've learned late in life how important diet and nutrition is for longevity and health. So thank you for coming today. It's been really nice to talk to you. And I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Bye for now.